The upper part of the body of our character is going to consist of three systems. Our clavicle system here, our arm system, which will not include our hand, and then finally our hand system. Okay, so starting off, we're going to do our arm first, then the hand, and then the clavicle. And we could draw these really in any order we want, but the arm's kind of like the bracing point for all this. So I'm going to grab our joint, and I'm actually in my front orthographic view, and I'm going to click and drag a joint in the middle of our arm like this. Now we do want it to be lined up where our arm kind of cuts right through from our chest. So when we rotate it down, that's where it's going to go. I'm holding down shift, and I'm going to draw a joint on the elbow and then on the wrist. So just like that, and I continue to on shift and drag out. Now you might notice here that the wrist is not centered. And this is because the character was modeled and the forearm was dipping down a little bit. So it wasn't a completely straight line. So because of this, I'm going to have to actually make some adjustments. I'm going to have to actually either translate our shoulder up and then rotate this shoulder down a little bit to match it in. And that's actually going to work fine. It's actually going to go exactly where we want to be. So with the last thing we want to do is rotate the elbow down to match that up. The reason why is because now the arm is actually, when we do our IKs, it's going to think our arm is actually supposed to bend in this direction and not actually forward and go with the hinge, because you can only hinge in one direction. So we'll never ever rotate our elbow down to match our wrist. Okay, so now that we have those three joints, we need to do a little bit more cleanup. So I can actually do this in our perspective view. So let's actually translate our shoulder forward so it's in the middle of our arm. Like that. And then we're going to rotate our arm back, because the shoulder can do that. And you might notice that our elbow's not too bad, but it could go down just a little if you translate it down a little bit further to be inside our elbow. Okay, now I can actually definitely rotate our elbow forward like this to match. We kind of want to have our wrist in there. Now, we want to make sure that our wrist is in the exact location. The perspective view is going to cause skewing, and it's not a really good tool for positioning exact areas of joints. So in this case, I am going to use our top view. Let's see. Like that. And we can see that it needs to be translated down. Now it's kind of hard, so I'm going to bring in our shaded mode and go into wireframe. This can also be done into shaded and say put wireframe on shaded. I also click on this button right here. So I translate my joint down like this. I'm going to look at another view, and I could rotate it back just a tad to center it more. Like that. Okay. That looks pretty good. That is definitely where it goes. And I need to bring our whole system down just a little bit further. Not getting it good. There we go. Okay. And that looks pretty good. Those are our three joints. Now remember, we're trying to follow our edge loops. So this is our breaking point on our wrist. So that's where we want our joint to be. Like I said, you got to be really careful with your orthographic views. I mean, with your perspective views, because they can skew how the joints look. So only the orthographic views are going to give you exact angles. Okay, so we got those down. Now we need to draw another two joints for our hand, and this will be very easy to do. So we'll just kind of create a joint. I'm actually going to just draw it right on top like this, and just hold down shift and draw out like so. And now I'm going to rotate our hand down so it's in the middle. I'll check and say, oh, it's not in there. It's fine. We can just translate it into position like that. And I do want it in the center of the hand, so I'm going to rotate it like that. Okay, good. So now we got our hand, our arm, and now let's do our clavicle. Okay. So our clavicle is going to start right here. And it's actually, the bone's going to here, and it comes right on top in your anatomy above your arm, where your shoulder is. So we're going to do something very similar here. We're just going to click, hold down Shift, and draw out. Like that. Okay. Then I can rotate it down to match. That's good. And I do need to do one more thing. I got to make sure that it looks good in our other views. And you can see it's way too far back right now. So I'm going to translate it forward like that. And I'm going to rotate it back. Okay. There we go. Okay, so we look in our views. That looks fine. You're not going to notice so much in the side view. The top view looks good. Our arm looks good. Our hand looks good. And all those positions look good. We could check our orientations now to make sure our orientations are clean. So we go into our component mode and click on the question mark, and the Y's are facing up. That's fine. So let's go back into our object mode and check our joints for our arm. And if we drew this straight, we normally very rarely have issues with our orientation. But the main thing I am definitely looking at here is that all three of these joint systems have the exact same orientation. So I'm select all three of them, and I go into my mode, and you see how Z's are facing forward on all of them, like that. And that's good, and Y's are all facing up. That's good. Okay, so now these are ready to be cleaned and then named. So I can select pretty much all three of these and just freeze transforms on them. Okay. Only translate X values, that's good. Okay, so now we just name them. So this is our arm, this is our left arm 01 bind. I'm going to hold Shift and expand our whole joint system. This is our left arm 02 bind. Then our left arm 03 bind. Then we have our hand. So this is our left hand 01 bind. Left hand 02 waist. This is actually supposed to be waist for this one too. And then we have our clavicle. Say left, I'm going to say clav 01 bind. And then I say left clav 02 waist. There we go. And we have all our systems. They are named and in proper position. Good.